getting new video of the National Guard arriving in Washington, D.C. after President Trump called them in to help bring order to our nation's capital. Reaction is pouring in from the left surrounding President Trump's major crime crackdown. And they're seething, all because President Trump wants to keep Americans safe. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Compagno, here with my co-host, Harris Faulkner. And also joining us today, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, Kennedy, podcast host of Kennedy Saves the World, and Bill Hemmer, co-anchor of America's Newsroom. Now, President Trump says the National Guard and temporary federal control of the D.C. police will help him to clean up D.C. streets once and for all. But for some reason, Democrats aren't happy.
What the president did this morning was political theater. His idea in federalizing the police force of D.C. ignores the reality. They are making dramatic progress in reducing violent crime in D.C.
Focus those cameras on everything that's going on, because this president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war.
I call it an abuse of power, right? The only reason this can happen to us in Washington, D.C. is because we are not a state. In no other city can the president take over the local police force. And I think that is ridiculous and insane.
And more reactions pouring in on social media, with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries telling the president to, quote, get lost. Wow. And failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton calling him unhinged. Meanwhile, anti-Trump protesters hit the streets, pushing back against the crime crackdown by singing. D.C. is our home. You can't have it wrong. D.C. is our home. You can't have it wrong. The liberal media is joining the chorus as well.
Maybe it's not about crime. Maybe it's that he really enjoys using U.S. military force against American civilians on American soil and wants any excuse to do it anywhere he can.
Chris, to be honest with you, I'm trying to hold my temper. I think there's an ongoing argument that he's having in his head with Black Lives Matter. We have to understand this, Chris, within the context of Donald Trump's racial politics. He's actually trying to give his base red meat to get them off of the Epstein story, and it's on the backs of citizens in Washington, D.C.
And the Washington Post is getting called out for quoting one D.C. resident who claimed the city was safe, but also requested to speak anonymously off the record over, quote, concerns of personal safety. Let's talk about, how we got here, Kennedy. So we had Biden's former chief of staff. He was on Fox and Friends this morning with this explanation for what might be driving the youth behind this crime problem. Let's take a watch.
D.C. for 2022 to 2023 had about 40% of kids that faced chronic absentee. So that means they missed 10% or more of the school year. Well, where are those kids when they're not in school? They're outside causing a little bit of chaos. They're raiding grocery stores, drug stores. They're putting entire sections of the city under curfew. And the fact of the matter is the president is addressing something that is very real. We can live in this city and say it's a beautiful city, and we can also say that we have a chronic issue when it comes to our youth.
Right. Both are indeed true. And we've had on this network many times the mother of the slain congressional intern who is mourning her son and acknowledging that this is our nation's capital, and also it is not safe.
No, it's not safe, but they point to the homicide rate, and that is not the only lens by which people look at crime, or by which people, more importantly, experience crime. And, the perception anytime you have one of these carjackings or violent assaults, the perception is that this is an unsafe place. And, D.C. should be a magnet for international visitors to come and get a taste of the very best of our country. But instead, people show up in D.C. and they worry they're going to be mugged. They're worried they're going to be shot. There still is a lot of gun violence. I'm delighted that the homicide rate has come down in D.C. and other major cities. But we still have this massive issue. And Tyrus pointed something out on the 5 last week, which I thought was an interesting way of looking at this. So if you've got kids, and this is why Judge Jeanine Pirro is really frustrated in her new role, you can't charge if you've got kids committing felony carjacking at 14, 15, 16 years old, you can't charge them as adults, although they're committing adult crimes, especially, 10 of them beating up big balls, that poor bastard. But if you can't do that, then you've got older people, maybe in gangs, who know that these kids are not going to be incarcerated. So why not use them to commit the crimes that would have you sent away for a decade? And so that's what they're doing. They're taking advantage of the system. They're also taking advantage of kids who don't have a lot of oversight, who are being failed by their parents, as well as the horrible D.C. schools who spend more per pupil than any other school district in the country.
Right.